You're watching Let's Chat.
Good morning and welcome back as we continue on Let's Chat for this Tuesday morning. Of course, February, it is National Heart Month, and we're here to talk about some of the great work they're doing with the American Heart Association. Before we bring up our next guest, I'm going to tell you, very few folks have had the opportunity to actually speak with someone who has had a heart transplant, not heart surgery, a total heart transplant. And it is a familiar face to News 12 Now viewers, and that is Chris Hopkins. Chris, good morning.
Good morning, Chip. I always wanted to tell you to go fly a kite, so I guess today's the day.
Today is the day. Hard to believe, less than 3 years ago, you were faced with one of the biggest decisions anyone could ever make for themselves or for a loved one, a heart transplant. 30 seconds or less, tell me what led up to that inevitable decision.
Well, it was a long road, but going back to 1998, I was 39 years old, had a massive heart attack. The one they call the widowmaker. It has about a 12% survival rate. So got through that. I had a defibrillator for about 15 years, which saved me a couple of times. And just over the course of time, heart function deteriorated down to about 11%. So lo and behold, come 2019, after lots of really great work by my friends over at St. Thomas West, they were able to get me into the operating room, and I had a heart transplant, and I have never felt better.
I remember the first time I saw you was at the American Heart Association ball not long after your transplant, and you looked phenomenally different. How much weight did you lose pre-transplant to after the transplant?
Probably about 40, 50 pounds leading up to the operation, and then another 50 or 55 or so afterwards. So a total of about 105.
And you and I were talking about this, and we have several times. Your whole demeanor is different. You're glowing, you're happier. There's a certain bounce to your step now that you didn't have 3 years ago.
Well, I have a saying. I like to say that perfusion is a wonderful thing. And so the little blood circulating around makes a big difference. But yes, you're quite right. You know, I had cheated death 2 or 3 times. I mean, not to be too dramatic about it, but
you did.
But I did. And so, you know, I like to come on here and talk about money, but I like to keep that in mind as my association with the American Heart Association. I've, obviously benefited greatly from the research of the Heart Association, read a lot of research papers while I was in the hospital awaiting transplant. But now I have an opportunity to get involved here on the ground in Chattanooga.
All right, we're gonna talk more about that here in just a moment, and your involvement with the great work they're doing at the Heart Association. Kind of a quick side trip here. Did you ever have the opportunity to meet with any of the family members from the donor heart?
Sadly, no. We've exchanged letters, and we know a little bit about the family, but at some point in time, I think they maybe decided that was, it was a little bit too personal, perhaps. We're speculating, but yes, we certainly had a chance to thank them for their generosity,
right.
And and I don't want to waste a day of that. So that's kind of like you say, a little bit of a new attitude and a little more spring in my step.
Not to put too fine a point on it, Chris, but you would be dead if it weren't for this family.
Well, that's absolutely true. So I'm eternally grateful.
All right, fast forward after the operation, 3 years later, you find yourself not just a board member, but a very active board member with the American Heart Association. Tell me some of the great stuff they're doing that helps out folks like you in your situation.
Well, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, we're all familiar, or we should be, with some of the fundamental research that's funded by the American Heart Association. But I was pleased and surprised to learn just how active the Heart Association is here in the Tennessee Valley. For example, we've been involved in assisting local clinics in donating blood pressure cuffs, over 260 blood pressure cuffs to 6 local clinics for self-monitoring of blood pressure. 40% nearly of Tennessee and suffer from high blood pressure, and almost half of those are untreated. And that's obviously one of the real precursors to heart disease. So in a number of other ways, the Heart Association has been very active here in our local community.
And there are a lot of things that the Heart Association does, not just during February, during Heart Month, but they're hard at work 24/7, 52 weeks a year. They're very fortunate to have you, not just as a board member, as I mentioned a moment ago, but a very active board member. Chris, we got to run. We're going to pick this up here over the coming days. I'm so glad you had the transplant and so glad you are alive and kicking, and so glad you're one of our regular guests here on News 12 Now. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Chip.
Find out more about Chris's success story. He is happy to share it with you, and you can find out more at the American Heart Association website, heart.org. That is heart.org.